AI is still going strong as the hot thing in tech town, but as a small business, you don't have time or resources to invest in a fad or be distracted by the shiny toy. So, how do you know if AI has enough ROI for you to invest? How do you know when your business needs to start building AI or let it be built by others? Welcome to Manage Chaos Podcast, where we give you the startup business rundown in less time than it takes for you to get to work. I'm Rachel Anderson, and today we're talking about the ROI of AI with our special guest, Mary Taylor. Katrina is not with us today, but luckily we have the incredible Mary Taylor. Mary Taylor owns her own consultancy business called Product Shift, focusing on helping SaaS companies with integrating or building ethical AI products. She has a master's degree in data science with a specialization in AI from Northwestern. And we're so happy to have her today. I'm so happy to have you today. Hi, Mary. I hope you're doing well.
Hey, Rachel. Thank you so much for having me. I always love our conversations, so it's a pleasure to be here.
I do too. I know we've known each other for a little bit now, kind of bumping into each other at different networking events, different business groups. And I know I told you this, I think a couple of weeks ago, but I constantly see AI things everywhere and think Mary has to talk about this.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so here are the question that we're going to start with today, which is really, what do you think the next AI trend is?
Yeah, actually, I love this question. I've gotten it a few times, but not as often as I would hope to. So personally for me, I think the next big thing is going to be causal AI. So to give a little bit of framework to this, everyone's been talking about generative AI currently, but before that, people would talk about predictive analytics. So predictive analytics allowed you to look at your data, see patterns or trends, and it helped you make better decisions. Now we have all the generative AI, things like large language models, which you'll hear ChatGPT or Claude reference to, anything that just produces text for you or produces images. That's currently the big buzz, but causal AI, which I think will be the next thing, is it's going to help you understand why something happened. So beyond patterns, beyond generating text and images, being able to use causal AI to help you in your strategy and the brainstorming and taking better risks and bets in your business. And it's a mixture of multiple different mathematical models, but I think that's going to be the next thing we see in the next couple of years after everyone's excited about the whole generative, of text and images. So.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So one of the things that I was told about, we had a conversation about, read a little bit about a few months ago, was something called super intelligence. And it was basically the concept that AI right now really replaces a lot of tasks. So generative AI was a great example. Like you put in your prompt, you ask the question, it kind of spits out something, even if that's in the background with businesses as they build their product. But super intelligence really talks more about the strategic part and how that strategic role is sort of the next element of the evolution of generative. So you're going from task into more of like a planning and strategic replacement. Do you think that there's some like similarity, or maybe the words are different, but the ideas are the same between causal and this like super intelligence kind of concept?
I think there's definitely a lot of integration between the two. I mean, you'll see people using words in multiple different ways. Like AI means a different thing to many different people. So yes, I see a correlation for sure. But it does come back to what you were saying, like helping you make better decisions. But yeah, definitely I see an integration there.
It's really interesting. Yeah, the world of AI, I feel like, has been part of businesses for forever. I mean, since I got into tech more than 12, 13 years ago now, we've been using AI in different capacities. We just haven't really called it AI. It's just sort of been, automation, I think, was really what we called a lot of the built-in products, and ways that we use what now I think would be termed AI. And I still see a lot of founders. In fact, last night I had a colleague send me an advertisement for a new tool for a really specific type of industry. And they were talking about AI. And I was like, this is literally the thing that we used to do 7 years ago. Now they've just sort of rebranded it, which I think is so fascinating, because to me, causal really is that next level. Like right now, generative AI is sort of the rebranding of something that has been slow in the adoption curve. But specifically for businesses. So we're thinking about all these different phases of AI and the future growth of AI, but it's so much to know and understand as a business leader. So really focusing in on that, how would you say businesses, especially startups and SMBs, how would they know if AI is worth the investment for their products as part of development, or even as a tool that they want to implement to help them with their business running? Like, how are they supposed to know if it's really worth it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I would say it depends on the business. There's people who are actually building products, people who are offering services. So it could be different for whichever business that you have. But I would say there's a lot of companies coming out now that are focusing purely on AI and using AI to create a product, like a SaaS product, and offer that to people. Of course, for that type of strategy, you'll need AI. Whereas there's other people who may be thinking about integrating an AI feature into a product that already exists. For someone like that, I would say they need to focus on what problems are the most important to them as a business. Anyone can come up with all these different ideas for how AI can be used. I definitely recommend writing those down, having a list of all of your ideas. I mean, I put them in my phone. I have so many notes in here with different ideas like that. But just having an idea is not enough. I would say take your business problems and prioritize them. What is the most important and why is it important? And then when you go back to your list of ideas, how could that idea help one of those business problems? If it's low down on your priority list, you probably shouldn't be focusing on that idea if it's only helping a tiny problem. However, if it's helping you with something at the top of your list, it might be worth considering. And on top of that, you could be thinking about the type of AI. Are you going to be purchasing a product that uses AI? So for example, people talk about Copilot. Maybe you want to purchase a monthly subscription to something like OpenAI. If it's just a monthly subscription, it's easy to test and experiment with. Now, if you want to actually create the AI and introduce it into your product, you need to think through what that cost is going to be to you. So a small AI development team can start somewhere between $400,000 and up. And when you release something that's using machine learning model that's related to AI, you can't just release it and let it live. That's not how it works. It's kind of like buying a car. You buy a car, it's great. It gets you everywhere you need to go. However, you still need to rotate the tires. You need to change the oil. You need to wash it every once in a while. And it's the same thing with machine learning. You need to update your models, make sure it's being retrained on the most accurate data. Otherwise, it's going to degrade over time. It's going to get dumber if you don't have someone there to maintain it for you. So think about the cost of what that AI team would be, and if that makes sense. If the return on investment for the product that you're going to release is going to save you, $30 million, then maybe, go ahead and spend that time paying the $400,000 for developers to help you build that tool. And sometimes you don't know until you release it. So you just need to constantly measure and monitor and confirm it's working for you. And I could go through an example if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I'm thinking of so many other tangents and places that I'm like, oh, I want to ask you this too. So let's start with the example and see how we can check off a few other things.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Well, Rachel, I know we have a mutual connection technically through Red Hat. So when I worked at Red Hat, I worked on their customer portal, which was basically a website that customers could go to, look for documentation. And if they couldn't find documentation to solve a technical issue, they could submit a technical support issue ticket. So what the team that I worked with had done is they built a machine learning model to allow users to just type in a sentence of the technical problem they had. And instead of having them search around the website for the documentation they need, they used this elastic search model that would automatically pull up documentation relevant to the issue they had. And just this simple machine learning model that was able to go through their knowledge base and pull up the most relevant information saved the company $30 million, which is why I used that reference earlier. And it reduced 200,000 support tickets per year. And this allowed customers to self-solve their issues much faster than it would be to submit a ticket, wait for someone to respond to you, and then also saved our technical support team a ton of time. They were able to solve more challenging issues that a customer wouldn't be able to solve on their own. So that's one example of one machine learning model that saved millions of dollars for this company. Obviously, that machine learning engineer that they hired great return on investment right there. And I've seen other people use this in scenarios with like customer support, maybe typing in the question now with generative AI. They can use large language models to make it more chat-like. Type in your question and get a chat response back with information that's trained on their knowledge base or their documentation.
So with that example, I'm not fully familiar with the salary behind a language model role. I'm assuming that they've got to be close to maybe 200K a year in tech. Would that sound maybe accurate?
Yeah, I'm definitely not an HR expert. I think it depends on the team that you have.
Okay.
Maybe like a mid-tier machine learning engineer could be somewhere between 150,000 a year, not counting benefits or the cost of the office or any other types of cogs related to hiring someone like that. But sometimes you'll need more than one person. Maybe you hire someone who actually develops the model, and then hire someone who's in charge of deploying it and making sure that it's being monitored and everything. So it depends on what your company needs. But if you're small, you could start with one person and maybe get lucky enough that that person has the skill set to build the model, monitor it, and know how to actually deploy it out into the world. So
that seems like the classic startup role. How many hats can you wear all at the same time?
yeah.
I loved your analogy of a car. I think that that's really smart. Like, you establish your model, you buy the model, you create the model, whatever that is for your business based on your problems that you're trying to solve. And then you still have all the maintenance that have to go into that. So it sounds like what you're saying is, from like an ROI perspective, smaller businesses have a lot more at stake with using resources, time, money that then doesn't have revenue that comes back, right? So make sure that you calculate your cost, what your potential revenue is from having that. And I think you made a great observation of even time spent trying to answer those questions at Red Hat, on that other team, saving that time, giving people back that way. How many people do you need to really implement this in a way where you can manage and maintain that and really keep it up to speed? And then is there revenue that comes back? Has your cost exceeded the potential revenue that it can bring to your product, or is it something that's going to outpace? And then that really gets the question of, do we outsource it? Do we build it in? Do we do it at all? Right?
Yeah, exactly. And one other thing I did want to quickly add there is, I know we talked about like the example of implementing it in product. We didn't talk too much about the service side, but there are tools that could help small businesses that do services to maybe automatically respond to phone calls or emails, and that automatic response is really valuable. So if you see like an increase in leads from using an AI tool to respond quickly, make sure you're measuring it, because if it's not, just get rid of the AI tool. If you're buying a monthly subscription for something. But in general, if you look at reports from like Gartner or MIT, they're saying there's a lot of companies excited about AI, and 90% of them are looking into AI and how to use it. However, only 11% of them are actually seeing a really strong financial benefit from using AI. And it might be because everyone's in the experimental phase at the moment, trying to see what it could do. I think it really comes down to education and people being willing to experiment with that AI tool. They think they need to know how the whole thing works in order to use it. And I wouldn't say that's the case. I would just encourage people to be curious, try the tool out. Try to make it break if you can. Like if you're talking to like ChatGPT or something like that, try to see what kind of responses you get. Try to get it to argue with you if you wanted. I've used ChatGPT, for example. I've submitted presentations to it and said, like, what do you think's wrong with this? Why would an investor argue with this? Or why would a manager argue and say this would be wrong? And it'll give you critiques. Just advancing the way that you're using these simple tools will let you know what it can do and if it is going to be beneficial. So definitely be curious. That'll help you understand if it's going to help you or not.
I love that. And I think that that's really smart, right? Like, we can't really plan for what we don't understand. We don't know how to engage what we haven't tested or tried. And something you said specifically about customers, I think, is a great reminder for people that are really trying to build smaller businesses and be really wise with their investments and resources of all kinds, which is that you should know and understand your entire customer experience, meaning every touch point that the customer has with your company. And where I see it so smart with AI and what you just talked about is that No matter what size your brand is, the thing that I have seen over and over again about why customers churn or why they come back to be repeat customers or long-term customers are things that have nothing to do with the product or service you actually sell.
Yeah.
They have to do with maybe customer service, how they're treated when they have a problem, how accessible are you as the person providing the service, what kind of documentation do you have that give them the ability to self-serve, all these small little touch points that don't necessarily have to do with big feature builds or big product or service kind of offerings. And that's where I hear you saying, AI could have a lot of value to help you in these smaller touch points, but you really got to kind of make it and break it, right? Like really get out there and test it and use it and see how that can be beneficial from small to large.
Yeah, definitely agree. And I would say you would probably know way more about this side being in the marketing space, but if you have a lot of automated touch points in your marketing flow, it can be really beneficial. If I use a simple example of, say I'm a roofer, and me and my whole team's, on top of someone's house putting shingles down, but someone calls me, I'm not going to be able to answer that. I'm carrying a 80-pound bag of shingles up a ladder right now. But if you just have a simple automated flow, it doesn't even have to use machine learning based AI. It could just be the automation of, oh, I got a call, and I have an automated response that says, sorry, I can't respond at the moment, but I'm going to get back to you by the end of the day. Or you should hear a response from us within 24 hours. Just that little bit of communication can help a customer. And it's just a little bit of automation that helps curate that relationship a little bit better.
That's great. So now let's say that the business has done their analysis, they've done the ROI kind of projections, they have an idea, they've been testing a little bit, they want to do it. How do they actually implement this in their business and in their processes?
Yeah. Again, it comes down to how they decide to implement it. I would say make sure you measure how things work beforehand and then after implementing the tool, whether that's you're buying an out-of-box service or you're actually building the model yourself, you've hired someone to help you with that. Make sure you measure what the model is going to be changing so you can see any type of improvement and if that improvement is worth it. So for example, I know, large language models, things like ChatGPT are very exciting right now for people and they're trying to implement it. So I'll stick with that example. If you're using a chatbot to automate responses to customers and answering questions, count how long it takes to get a response before using the machine learning model. So maybe it takes 18 hours to respond to somebody, but with the model, it takes an hour to respond. Also making sure to measure things like their satisfaction. Maybe you realize like, hey, the model's responding really quickly, but we notice people are being frustrated with the responses that they're getting, which is going to have customers lose trust in you as a business. So again, metrics, very, very important. Also considering and taking the time to make sure what you're releasing, if you're building a machine learning model from scratch, especially making sure that it's not harmful or illegal too. There's very rare scenarios where that happens. And I'll give one small example. There was a company called RealPage that released a product where it would automatically make suggestions for how someone should price their apartments, because it was basically a property management tool. So it had taken all this information from like, oh, well, this unit has a pool and this one doesn't have a pool, or this one has 3 bedrooms and that one has 2 bedrooms. It used all these little details to say, hey, you should charge $1,500 a month for rent. Well, the thing is, that's technically collusion. It's illegal for property managers to call each other and say like, hey, like if I price mine at 1,500, will you price yours at 1,500? But the model was doing this technically on the back end and no one was even aware of it. So RealPage was sued for that. I believe that they're fixing it and working on that and everything. But in their mind, they're thinking, oh, I'm automating these things. Like I'm doing a good thing, but you need to think through. I don't know if you've watched the show Black Mirror or not, but like do like a Black Mirror exercise where you think like, how could I be possibly harming people? And RealPage got, in trouble for this. And there's basically thoughts that maybe they affected how much rent has been increasing the last couple of years because that product was released and they work for all the major property management companies. When you have a lot of power, you need to think through what you're releasing and how it affects people. So first off, metrics, definitely measure. think through how your product is ethical or legal and make sure it's not going to harm anyone. Make sure to have guardrails around how that product can be used, whether that's telling users, hey, just so you know, this is an AI, or hey, just so you know, here's how your data is going to be used. That adds trust to customers because they're going to know like what it is that they're sharing with you or not sharing with you. Let's see, what else? I feel like I should tell you something else here. Oh, and the costs. I know we talked about that a little bit too. Making sure the cost that you're spending on it is actually showing a return on investment for you.
I think that's incredible. Those are all really good places to end, making sure that you have thought through the ethical implications. Woo, so more coffee morning. Ethical implications, the ROI, making sure you have your guardrails, and I forget
the cost.
The
Yeah,
cost. Yeah, the cost.
What spending is actually giving you a return on investment. And you just have to measure it. I know I talk about numbers a lot. I'm a data person, so I can't help it.
Me too. I like it. Well, Mary, this has been such a great conversation. I feel like I have a dozen more questions that I could potentially ask, so maybe we'll have to do a round 2 here. But perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here. I hope that you had a good time just giving us a little chat, and hopefully we'll get to talk again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, Rachel. It's always a pleasure speaking with you.